Light the beam, because it's time for Nerdy for 30, a podcast where we talk about nerdy-ish movies for 30-ish minutes. My name is Kevin Bauer, a.k.a. Critic's Choice. With me, as always, is the people's champ, Tim Keck.
Hey, today we are covering The Exorcist from 1973. Generations and generations ago, we went out to the desert, we dug up a crypt, we pulled this movie out of it, and we watched it. If you haven't seen it, a girl gets possessed and they do an exorcism. You're caught up. Kevin.
We're leaving out all the stuff with Father Karras and his mom.
Oh, fuck his mom.
Wow. You sound like Pazuzu, my friend.
There's a lot of... I will say we did The Exorcist Beginner Believer. The Exorcist Beginner.
The Exorcist. Can't wait for Exorcist Intermediate next year.
God, when they get to hard, watch out. The Exorcist. I started watching this again. It's been a long time since I've watched The Exorcist, and then for Believer, I tried to watch The Exorcist before that, and I was just not in the right shape. I just was not into it. I was like on my phone, just not happy. Pretty bored the whole time, and got into a portion of it. And then The Exorcist Believer, after that, I was like, okay, now I kind of want to watch The Exorcist. And I found it much more watchable after being in the headspace for Believer, because it is a slow burn. Mm-hmm. And the ending, I think, is great. This isn't without its problems, but it definitely makes Believer. I keep wanting to say Beginner. It definitely puts Believer into context of like what they were actually going for, what they're actually trying to do. And you realize how intentional the first one is. I don't know if it's all necessarily well thought out, but it feels very, very intentional, and they make a lot of interesting choices. And I don't know where we're going to put this, where we're going to rank this one, Kevin. I have no idea. What did you think of this movie?
I honestly, I think it's extremely well thought out. I think it's maybe a little overthought at times, actually, because it's very, very intentional, like you said, with what it's doing. There are some strange cuts in this movie that you don't really see in movies anymore. It has that attribute that a lot of older films have, where there are scenes where it's not entirely clear what the character is doing. And it made me realize the extent to which movies go out of their way now to make sure that every single thing can only be interpreted as the exact way that the filmmaker wants you to interpret it, with regard to what's going on in the movie. People are going to have a problem with the fact that I just said that. I don't mean that they're not leaving things open to artistic interpretation. I mean that there's not a scene where a homeless person on the street asks for help, and then we cut back to a person and they just kind of awkwardly squirt off the stage. That was a really strange scene. It felt like there was more of the scene coming. We just cut to a different scene. That's the kind of thing that I'm talking about. It doesn't really happen anymore. They would, I feel like, go out of their way more to show him turning down the opportunity to help this homeless person, because that would inform us more of what we're supposed to be thinking about this person's struggle. Whereas, as it stands, once more, he just squirts his way off the screen.
This is about Karras, right? This is like, he's the star of the movie. This is his thing. And you're right. All of those things like kind of flesh out what he's feeling. Like the homeless guy says, "I'm a Catholic, help me out," and he moves on, and it feels like he's battling with his faith, right, the whole time. And I kind of get it, and don't need as many more examples. But it seems like maybe that's kind of the old timiness of this, is like, okay, but here's another example. Here's another example, and it's like, I feel like we've got it. This is a similarity I noticed in Believer. Was they're both boxers. Leslie Odom Jr. is a boxer too. And in Believer, they are, well, in this movie, there's a scene where Karras goes to visit his mother, And these people who are in the hospital with her are grabbing at his clothes and they're pulling at him. And he has his collar on, like as a priest, and they take it off of him. And then I don't think he doesn't really wear it for a good portion of the movie. And it seems like then he goes to talk to his mom. And I'm like, oh, there's all this symbolism in like the removal of the collar. And he's not talking to his mom as a priest. He's talking to her as her son and like dealing with all these emotional things that are maybe outside of the religious thing. And you can see his struggle because he has these personal problems. And then a pastor. And it's beautiful. In Beginner, Believer, God damn it. In Beginner, Leslie Odom Jr. Boxes at the beginning, just like Karras does. And did you notice that he burns his hand so that they can wrap it like a boxer? And so that the next 3 shots have him in profile with the wrapped hand, like in the shot intentionally, so that you can tell that he is like a fighter. You can tell that he is willing to lay it all on the line to help his daughter.
Fuck, that's a really good detail in a movie that I don't really want to give very much credit.
It's a great detail, but it's like the kind of corny. It's a little corny, but it's a great detail, and that's what it feels so intentional about this, right? The collar thing. I think you can read into it. I think if you want symbolism, it's there. But it, as far as just sitting down to enjoy a movie, I was on my phone a lot.
I mean, it's what, 50 years old? Like, it definitely is like,
yeah,
it's showing a little bit at the seams. I think overall it's still a very good movie. I'll spoil where I want to put this. I think this is a prestigious movie through and through. Like, I think that this movie is like an incredibly well-crafted piece of cinema. It's notable to me that this is regarded as one of the scariest movies ever made, if not the scariest movie ever made. And there isn't that much actual terror in the movie. If you get right down to it, the scenes with Regan being possessed in a way that is actively, immediately terrifying, like not something that's going to make you think later about, what a Spinal Tap looked like in 1973, but like right now she is spitting demon vomit onto someone. There's, I think, maybe like a combined 7 minutes of that in this entire movie. It was interesting to me. I watched this before work and I didn't start it in enough time, so I had to pause it with about a half hour left of the movie. And most of the really big shit hadn't even happened yet. So it's very backloaded. I finally put that back on today earlier. And even in that back half hour, like watching that back half hour in isolation, most of it is complete silence. No joke. It's mostly people contemplating. So it's nuts, man. There's like so little actual demonic stuff that we're seeing. And yet here it is, like the demon movie.
Yeah, I think she pees the carpet 35 minutes in.
Yeah.
Which feels like a long time, especially because there's another hour probably before we get to the exorcism and the good stuff. And I think there's like an hour before she's like really possessed. You're an hour in before she's like throwing up on stuff and, whatever. You still got to get the bed shaking and things like that. And I get that's scary. I have so much more respect from this movie after watching Believer. Because I'll get into my thief. The actual exorcism at the end, it's very short. It's like maybe 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And then they take a break and then they come back and the whole thing is probably 20 minutes. And it's incredible. I think it's really, really good. I'll spoiler alert, my beef is also about the exorcism. But as far as like, gosh, and Marin goes down and which is also kind of crazy. It's just the whole thing is crazy. I don't know if it even makes sense. Karras leaves the room, comes back, and Marin is face down on the bed. And it's like, you couldn't have shown us that. We couldn't have seen that. That would have been cool. They do a lot of things off camera that we just kind of go with. But man, the scenes where they're throwing the holy water, and it's cutting her leg and she's thrashing on the bed. Oh, man, they crush it. They crush it. And to see it now today, like 2023, we have all this technology. We have, you'd think we would have come farther than that. And I don't think the actual exorcism in Believer comes even somehow it doesn't even come close to the original, which is a fascinating like testament to how good the original actually is. What'd you think of The Exorcism?
Dude, it's absolutely phenomenal. I mean, it's the gold standard. And what you said about the effects, it's remarkable how good this movie looks. The scene, it's during that exorcism. It's when she's shouting at Marin. Marin first got there, and Pazuzu's shouting at him. And Lauren walked into the room right at the same time that she's doing the tongue thing, which I feel like that's not one of the main ones that people bring up, but it looks so fucking crazy. And she, in general, the makeup work, she looks so scary. The actual doll, one of the dolls from when they do the head turn, is in the Museum of Moving Image in Astoria. And I have a hard time being near it because of how upsetting it is, even as an inanimate doll. So it is truly, truly nuts that it's half a century later and Exorcist Believer is weak comparatively.
Yeah. Honestly, I remember when I think about The Exorcist, I mostly think of Scary Movie, how they opened one of them with like the spoof of it. Yeah. And when I saw her doing the tongue thing, like they take it immediately to a sexual place. And I think the priest like start hooking up for a second, and she's doing the tongue thing, like, and he does the tongue thing back. And that's all I can think about now when I see that. But you're right. There's just a series of increasingly weird things that she does that happen. And I don't know, that whole section is great. It's such a small portion of the movie relatively.
Yeah.
But it's very good. Do you have like a specific thief that stands out to you?
Specific thief is probably that they cut right to the chase with the mom seeing that this is supernatural and the mom firmly being on her side, because I feel like a trap that a lot of movies fall into is they got to convince the parents first, and then they got to convince the authorities, and then the exorcist will come, something like that kind of a stage. And the fact that she comes into the room immediately, the beds are going crazy and the dresser moves. I like that. We're kind of the chase a little bit. And it's, again, 50 years ago. Like this, that's interesting efficiency. I was also shocked the first time I saw this movie that they did all the work they did with all of the medical testing. I had no idea. I'd heard so much about The Exorcist. I had no idea that there was any kind of a scientific or medical angle in this movie. And it's so cool to me that, again, a movie that has a reputation for being almost exclusively religious and mystical did have the characters try to explain things away with scientific examination. It takes away that safety net that you have in your brain where you're like, well, this wouldn't happen to me because I would go see a doctor about it. It's the same thing as like if there's a situation with like a serial killer in a movie and they're like, why don't you just call the cops? And the movie has the cops come and get slaughtered. Like they're answering your question. Why don't they just do this? Because they do it and it still doesn't work. I really respect that.
I thought that was something that Believer did pretty well. And I've seen Exorcist before, but it was years and years ago. And I got to tell you, I completely forgot about the doctor stuff. I was watching Believer thinking, oh, it's good that they're exploring this facet of this. And then watching it again, I was like, oh yeah, they do all these tests. You're right. It's a different vibe because the mom is advocating for the supernatural in this, as opposed to, the parental figure in Believer. We're really just like spoiling everything in Believer. So there's not that much there's nothing to spoil. It's The Exorcist.
Yeah.
Instead of in the Believer, it's the dad who needs to be convinced of the supernatural. It's a good, this somehow worked. This works way better, I think. Really
Dude,
does.
On that same note of being convinced of the supernatural, I wanted to ask you about the opening sequence of the movie in the desert, because there's a lot of scuttlebutt about this scene online and in interviews from back in the day where the screenwriter was adamant that we needed that scene in the movie. That scene could not be cut. I think it's like 11 minutes at the beginning of the movie. And everybody was saying, cut the scene. Like, cut that scene, you got a perfect movie. And director and screenwriter were like, no, it stays in. So was that completely necessary? Do you think that really adds a lot of color to the rest of the movie? Or do you think you could have chopped it off?
No, it doesn't add anything. It doesn't add anything. I think it's a waste of time. The thing that I like about it, and that I really noticed on this for this like second passing at it after watching it basically on my phone the whole time a few weeks ago and then watching it like this week, like with more intentionality, is it's a little creepy. There's scenes where they're like standing and the wind's blowing. And I think the dig is worthless. People are like, oh, it flushes out the character of Marin. Marin comes out of nowhere at the end. And I'm not even thinking about the beginning. I'm just like, oh, cool. Now they just called in some random guy to do this thing. But it's not about Marin. So who cares about Marin's backstory? Sure. Marin is just another supporting character to tell the story of Karis. So, but I realized when you start this movie after the desert scene, it's very positive, very upbeat. It's just a mom loving her daughter. It's her acting on set. Nothing creepy happens for a long time in this movie. Like 35 minutes into this movie, something creepy happens, right? So if you don't have that opening scene, I got a little tense watching the opening. I think it'd be easy enough to recreate another kind of chilling moment in that. But without the opening scene, you're watching 35 minutes of just like pretty happy family. Uninteresting. It's pretty uninteresting for the first 35. I don't know. What do you feel about it? You cut it or keep it?
I think keep it. I'm with you in that there's a lot of nice tone setting in there. The things that immediately stand out to me are, for whatever reason, the kid that runs up and tells him about the find, that kid is like iconic to me. I don't know why. Something about the kid running up and the way he runs up and all that, it's just like, it's like stuck in my brain. The scene with Marin and the Pazuzu statue really stands out to me. The framing in that and the size of that statue and the way that it's above him in the scene and kind of looming over him, and that sound of the dogs fighting in the background. I mean, that's one of the stranger and more powerful images in the movie. So I like that a lot. But I also, I care about the characters and stuff once we jump into the happy version of the movie too. I really dig all that. I like the director a lot. Burke, right, is his name? So I'm in on all that. I'm in on the whole movie. I'm all the way in. I love it.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, the first thing's cool. It just seems so out of left field, and I'm not sure it's really relevant to the rest of the movie, except then they find like a little statue in the girls' room or something, right? Which I thought was kind of referencing the opening scene. But I don't know. It feels like she kind of gets this demon possession out of nowhere. It feels very random.
Yeah.
It just one day she's peeing on the carpet. One day she wasn't, and now this is what she does. She pees on the carpet. The bed shakes violently. Sometimes she's a creep. Sometimes she's like, I don't know, sweet. But it just gets weird, man.
She's like a Sour Patch Kid in a commercial, Tim. Sometimes she's sweet. Sometimes she's sour.
I think one of my biggest beefs, Kevin, which I think, again, we're talking about the opening, which I think is well-trod territory. I think another point that people argue about all the time is the possession at the end. How Karis is able to convince the demon to leave her and go in him, and then he can commit suicide and get rid of the demon. It feels really out of left field. It's cool. It's incredibly cool. It feels powerful. But also the whole time I'm like, why does this make any sense? Why would the demon leave her to go into him? Why? How does that even work? Why isn't the demon possessing more people then? Why is the demon just put out by him dying? Like, if they just killed the girl, the demon would go away? I guess so.
But you can't kill the girl.
Maybe you can't kill the girl, but he could kill himself. Also, why is the conclusion? Why is his arc that he's ready to die now? I don't know. It's weird. It's weird. I'm not the first person to say it, but I don't love it.
Yeah, it is strange because part of the mythology is that he has been baptized and he lives his life in service to the Lord, and therefore he should not be able to be a vessel for this creature. And I know that the plot of the movie is kind of that he's lost his faith, but still the simple fact that he was baptized and was in the priesthood should, again, theoretically be enough to cover him there.
Right.
Also, I mean, there's a really cool, I don't want to spoil too much. There's an incredibly cool riff on this whole premise in the movie The Pope's Exorcist. They do it fast. I don't know that I can recommend that whole movie, but I can recommend the first 5 minutes of that movie. And there is an incredibly cool riff on this idea. So check that out. It's on Netflix right now. I think him jumping out of the window is his dedication to his faith in a way, because he is willing to completely end his own life in service to this girl and in service to his God. But also, it's strange because he's committing suicide, which is a mortal sin. Yeah. And if we're going off of the mythology, which we should be because the Vatican is involved here, then him killing himself should preclude himself from being able to go to heaven, which maybe is not, his point anymore, but it is a selfless act. I don't know. It's dicey. Does he go to hell? Who knows? I guess it is a showing of faith, but it's also, you're right, he's killing himself. It feels like a weird way of giving up. It's also, Marin has done these before, and yet we leave the room, come back, he's dead. I'm not like, why did he die? How did he die? The girl's like untied on the bed too, I think, when they come back. Like, it's something happened and it was weird. I don't know. Do you have a beef? What's your biggest beef coming out of this? Biggest beef. We talked about this a little bit on last week's episode, and it directly relates to what you just started talking about. There has never been a good priest in an exorcism movie. There has never been a single good priest in an exorcism movie. The concept of these priests losing their faith when confronted with a rock solid example with proof. It's pretty easy to have faith in something that you have proof of. And yet here these priests are, dropping the bag at the last minute. I'm not saying I would do great in this situation. I would do horribly in this situation. I'm not a man of the cloth. Like, if you are, it just blows my mind. If you are, what's an analogy here? Oh boy, what's another thing that people have a lot of debate as to whether or not it exists? Let's talk about Linus and the Great Pumpkin, Tim.
The Great Pumpkin. I was going to say, like a Jets Super Bowl. Like, what are the chances that the Jets could get to the Super Bowl? Like, if they were in there and winning a game, you would, if they actually won the Super Bowl, you'd have to acknowledge that they were a good team that year and they won the Super Bowl. But there'd be some part of every Jets fan that's like, no. It couldn't have happened. It's not right. This isn't the way the world is. I don't know. Is that a good analogy? Who knows? Kevin, what was our bit this week?
I'll tell you exactly what the bit is, Tim. Tim, I want to launch a new segment on you. This one's called Merch Madness. Go with me on this. You and I have been hired to design the merch for the original Exorcist from 1973. They decided there wasn't enough merch 50 years ago. Hot Topic has an opening. I want to fill the shelves. What do you got? What pieces of merchandise would you try to make from this movie?
Okay, this is what I thought of. I wanted to do something with the vomiting, right?
Yes.
And initially I was thinking Halloween mask, too easy. It reminded me of like creepy crawlers or like a Play-Doh factory as a kid. And there's like this elaborate setup and it generates like a goo or a gummy. I'm picturing this as a kid's toy. And you get like all the different bottles and you combine them. You get to learn chemistry and math and you measure things out and you pour them into the head of Reagan. And then you push a button and it like loads up. Maybe you have to like, generate electricity. You get a potato and you like plug it in, like really a real learning experience for the kids. And then you stand in front of it as she winds up and just blobs it all out on you like a shotgun blast. Not like the regular. Maybe there's two settings. You can do the constant spew or you do the shotgun blast. Yeah. But I'm picturing the shotgun blast because it comes out, it goes right on the face of whoever's in front of this, and then they can peel it off and eat it.
Oh my God.
Or if it covers their whole mouth, they can eat their way out of it, kind of eat it, suck it back in.
Oh my, could you eat creepy crawlers?
There were some that you could eat, I thought.
There were definitely ones you could eat.
And I was Googling it. There's like, now it's all ooze or whatever. What are the kids into?
Oh, slime.
Not gack,
for a
slime.
while, yeah.
But there's edible slime out there. So you can make this goop and make it edible. And you can, I'm sure we have the technology to shoot it at a child. So I feel like this is very doable. I feel like we need to copyright this right away.
Oh my God.
I feel pretty good about this. Did you have one you were thinking about, Kevin? Or what do you think of mine?
I
Honestly.
love it. I'm big into it. I can see it happening. I can see the commercial right now. I can hear the jingle, Tim. And speaking of hearing jingles, my pitch to you was going to be the Piano Priest songbook. I want a songbook of all the hits that the priest that's playing piano at that supper party loves to play at these different supper parties. I'm thinking we could do, you release the songbook. I'm thinking they do the kind of thing that they did with the Spidey Bells song from the original Spider-Verse movie, where they actually recorded a little album and dropped it on Spotify. I want like a little album of that singing priest doing just all the hits. You can toss that on at a party. You don't even need to invest with the playlist. That's good. That's all you need.
I think that's great. The singing priest blows my mind every time I see him. It's like you think a priest isn't going to be fun at a party, and then he gets behind the piano and the good times start. And it's not like he's doing this on his own. Like, this priest is the life of the party.
Oh yeah.
Everyone wants to be around the piano. Everyone wants to sing. They want to invite him to everything. They love this guy, which is a priest relationship that I didn't really understand. I didn't realize that these were your drinking buddies and like your pals that you would just come over and play songs with. I think that's great. So you think, so this is so that like a kid learning piano can learn how to be as charismatic, be as charismatic as a priest at a party.
Yeah, you know what? As the old adage goes. You saying the educational aspect of it, you're right. This should be a master class. This is now my pitch is a master class from the piano priest. Why wasn't the piano priest doing the exorcism? Why wasn't he getting in there, jazzing it up a little bit?
He shows up at the end like shaking his head, right? Like, oh man, can't believe this happened. God. I mean, I had that recital to go to, but
recital. The camera pans out and he's the one playing Tubular Bells on a keyboard.
Man, the whole thing would have turned out different if his recital wasn't on the same night they decided to do the exorcism. Man, he would have made a big difference.
You're saying recital, but I like to think he just means church. He just plays the organ in church. It's a recital every weekend.
I guess that's true. You like an audience, I suggest getting into church. Kevin, I had another idea. I don't know if I feel as good about this one, but I wanted to run it by you.
Hit me.
I was thinking a slinky that falls down the stairs, and when it gets to the bottom, it squirts blood everywhere.
Oh God.
And
I think that's good.
And I haven't been able to decide if it's like liquid blood or it's the kind of thing like plastic that like goes everywhere, and then you have to like box it back up like a Jack in the Box. Right. Like something opens, like you put it on a timer and it goes down the stairs until it like a 10-second timer. Maybe it plays a fun song from the priest book. You could like cross promote these things.
Sure.
Or it just plays the Exorcist theme. It plays the Exorcist theme for like 5 seconds. And then 5 seconds in, the whole thing just like blows up and there's like blood everywhere. And then you can like fold it back up and get ready to go again.
Into it. I'm there. Lock it down.
I think we've got some good merch ideas. Let's get the store going. nerdyfor30.com/merch. You'll be able to find it there.
You
all
might
kinds
get
of
a
good stuff.
404 page not found at first. Keep trying. It's there.
Yeah. It's a 404 website. So
yeah,
we're feeling pretty good about it. Kevin, I have a question for you.
Please.
An important question.
You can ask me anything.
This is tough. Kevin, is The Exorcist better or worse then Barbenheimer double feature.
I think it's I think it's
this
better.
is a good one.
I think it's I think it's better. What do you think?
Barbenheimer, a prestigious movie, good prestigious movie. It's right above the Air Meridian.
I do think it should be above the Air Meridian.
I think it's above the Air Meridian. It's not as like dumb fun as the Expendables or Fast X. It's not actually as good as Everything Everywhere All at Once. But Barbenheimer, I feel like combined it's the definition of prestigious good, where it's just like, it's somehow unsatisfying to me. As a combination, there's just something missing. And I feel like they're linked. It's either right above it or right below it, I think. The Exorcist.
Yeah. Wow. I think if we are rating Barbenheimer as one specific combination unit.
We did one episode,
so it's one unit. I think it's above that.
Okay. It's above that, and right below, Expendables.
As it should be. The more I think about that movie, the more fun I had.
That was a great time, man. Oh, boy. I loved Expendables.
Same. I'll watch it again. I really...
Gosh.
I had a blast.
I feel like Ron Swanson in Parks and Rec, like half-mast is too damn high. like this thing's midway through it and it's just not high enough. Expendables is number 15 and I'm still like, or 14, and I'm like, it's got to get up there some more. It's got to climb that ladder.
We can keep climbing. I'm thinking about that scene in the movie where they take down the like main, I guess the midi boss, the like boss before the boss. His head pops. He falls and his head pops. Man.
God, it's great. And they just have a fight with dirt bike. I mean, you guys got to see the actor spend 4 balls.
You got to get out there. See it in theaters.
See it in theaters while it's still there. Kevin, I think this is a prestigious movie. It's right above Barbenheimer. Is it a prestigious good movie?
I think it's prestigious good. Yeah.
I think it is good. I think it is good. It is good. It's like a little slow, but it's good. It's good. It is good. It is good. I was on my phone a little bit, but it's still good.
It's good.
Is it great? I wouldn't say it's great. Is it really good? It's good. It's good, though. It's prestigious good.
It's definitely good.
Kevin, any final thoughts on The Exorcist 1973?
You know, I'll go to my grave wanting to know what Burke was about to say when he was shit-faced drunk leaving the party. He was about to unleash an absolute truth bomb, and he second-guessed it, and he third-guessed it, and he fourth-guessed it, and then he waved his hand and got pushed out the door. And I will always wonder what that man was about to say. How about you, Tim? Any last thoughts?
Gosh. Yeah, I mean, it's great. It's fun. The girl was creepy. I had a great time. Honestly, I think I would probably just rewatch. If next time I rewatch this movie, I'm going to rewatch the last 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And I could probably do that whenever, you know, if I walk in on this movie and it's in the final, whatever quarter, I'm not leaving the room. I'm seeing it through. I got to see how it ends. It's so good, man. It's really awesome. So yeah, that's it. That's my final thought.
Rock and roll. Thanks everybody for listening. This has been Nerdy for 30. We will be back here next week with our last Halloween season episode for this year. It's going to be a blast. We're doing the original Scream from the 90s. So check that out. I think it's on Paramount Plus right now. It's probably on Shudder too. Just look for it online. You're going to find it. And until then, everybody, stay nerdy. Bye.
Stay nerdy. Bye. Scream. I love Scream. Scream's great.
Me too. Oh, Sydney.